Your efforts years ago to keep Berkshire's textile mills running show you once aspired to balance capitalism with compassion. I cannot make a moral case for practices at either Clayton or 3G, and I wonder how you can do so.
It's better to back up even to the situation in mortgage lending that's taken place and why Clayton follows a pattern that actually is exemplary and rather extraordinary in the home building and mortgage business. If you look back at the housing bubble in 2000, well, ending more or less in 2008, one of the great problems, in fact, maybe the greatest cause, was the fact that the mortgage holder became totally divorced from the mortgage originator and from the home builder. In other words, the home builder built a house and sold it, took his profit, and that was that. And it didn't really make much difference who he sold it to. And the mortgage originator would originate a mortgage, but then package those, securitize them, and often sell them around, even around the world. So people thousands and thousands of miles had no connection with the original transaction. And the mortgage originator suffered no loss if the loan went bad. So you had these two parties, the one that connected with the home buyer and the one that originated the mortgage, and they had no connection with the actual outcome of whether it was a good mortgage or not. At Clayton, unlike virtually anybody, there's a few, we offer mortgages to all the buyers of our homes, and we have retained roughly $12 billion of mortgages on 300,000 homes. Now, when a mortgage goes bad, two people will lose. The person that owns the house loses, and the person that owns the mortgage loses. And in our case, we have this identity of interest. We have no interest in selling anybody a house and having the mortgage default, because it is a net loss to us. It's a net loss to the customer. And like I say, that's not true of most home builders. It's not true of most mortgage originators. And there's been much talk in terms of possible changes in mortgage rules to try and get the mortgage originator to keep some skin in the game. And they've talked about them keep retaining maybe 3% of the mortgage or something like that, just so they would have an interest in really what kind of a mortgage they were putting on the books. Well, we keep, in many cases, we offer to everybody, but we keep, probably in half the cases, we keep 100% of the mortgage. So we have exactly the same interest as society has and as the home buyer has in not making mortgage loans to people who are going to get in trouble on those loans. Now, it's true that manufactured housing hits the lower end of the market in terms of house values. Of the homes selling for $150,000, new homes selling for $150,000 or less, 70% of them are manufactured houses, and some of those people, many of those people, do not qualify on a FICO score to obtain loans that are government guaranteed. Some do, but most don't. And the question is, can you lend intelligently to people who have a good chance of making the payments and keeping that house? And Clayton has been exemplary in doing that. About 3% of the mortgages default in the year, and when they do, we lose money, and the person who bought the house loses money. But 97% don't, and most of those people would not be living in the kind of houses that you can see right here at the auditorium without the financing availabilities that Clayton makes available and others make available. And I invite you to go out and look at that house for $69,500. That house will be transported and erected, ready to go. You have to have the land, and I'll get to that in a second. But for $69,500, you have that house with appliances, with air conditioning, with a couple bedrooms, 1,200 square feet, and probably you'll put another 25,000 or so in the house, but in terms of the land and preparation there. So maybe it'll be $95,000, but you can make your own judgment as to whether that's a decent value. And I know most of you are not living in $95,000 homes, but there are an awful lot of people that aspire to do that. And we help them with our own money at risk to move into those homes. And if we make a mistake, it hurts them and it hurts us. And that is a very unusual arrangement in the financial industry. Now, I read that story, and in it, there was an item in it which, reading through the story, I just knew wasn't true. I mean, nobody that knew anything about manufactured housing could have put that up, but I'd like to put that up on the slide where it says another Clayton executive said at a 2012 affidavit that the average profit margin on Clayton homes sold in Arkansas between 2006 and 2009 was $11,170, roughly 1/5 of the average sales price of the homes. So this fellow is quoting somebody as saying that we're making a 20% profit on home sales. Well, I knew that was nonsense, so I asked for the affidavit. And I read the affidavit about 3 times, and nowhere in that affidavit was a statement made. Now, what was said was what I'd show in the next slide. It's hard for me to see what's up there, but it should show item 6, where it says Clayton manufactured homes sold 2,201 homes, and item 7 that 4% of the gross profit from the home sales total $983,000. So if we'll move to the next slide, I did a little arithmetic, and sure enough, if you take 25 times the commission was 4%, so you take 25 times, and then you divide by the number of homes, you come up with 11,170. But that statement in the affidavit said gross profit. And gross profit is not the same thing as profit. I'm not sure that the fellow that wrote the story understood that. So I have put on the next page the difference, for example, of a couple other retailers. I've put Macy's and Target. And Macy's has a 40% gross profit margin, but a pre-tax margin of 8.5%, after tax of 5 and 4. Gross profit is if it's the case of Macy's, what they pay for a sofa or something, and what they sell it for. But they also have the expenses of paying salespeople, rent, utilities, advertising, all kinds of other things. So the idea that gross profit and net profit are the same thing is, anybody that understands accounting would never make a mistake like that. In our particular case, on the next page, our gross margin is what the fellow said in the affidavit, and he used the word gross of 20%. But the writer of the story turned that into a profit margin, and our profit margin is actually 3%. So I just like to point out the mathematics on that particular subject. There's one other item you should see, and again, I have trouble seeing what's up there. But we have in every retail Clayton establishment, we have a lender board which shows exactly what a variety of lenders are willing to do and what their terms are. And we also have a sheet which I think will be put up there. And it's less than a full page, and it sets out the lenders who are available. And at the very top, I'm just looking to see whether I can find that right here. At the very top of it, it basically says, check out more than one lender, and you can send the application to any of these people. And we have people sign at the bottom, and there's no small print on it. I can't see it here, but it may look like small print. But it's one page, and multiple lenders are put on that sheet. Sometimes people borrow. There's a credit union in San Antonio is very big. The local bank is very big. And we also will lend money to the buyer of the home if they wish. If you buy that home that's out there, we'll give you a list of 4 or 5 lenders, probably including your local bank, and you will probably take the loan that offers you the best terms. So I make no apologies whatsoever. Various ways. I mean, some people call to the office, some people write in. I can say in the last 3 years, I have not received one call. We got 300,000 loans. I have not received one call from any party in connection with a Clayton home. Moreover, we are at Clayton. We are regulated in almost every state in which we have financing, which is practically every state. And in the last 3 years, we have had, I think it's 91 examinations by the state. 91 examinations. They come in, they look at our practices, they make sure that they conform with the laws. And in those 91, I think the largest fine we've had has been $5,500. And the largest group of refunds we had was about $110,000. Yeah, there were, and you know, those were regulated not only by those states, we're regulated by HUD, all kinds of people. When we can, we try to get people an FHA loan because that's the best loan for them to get. But as I say, most of our borrowers are below the 620 FICO score, and it's true that 3% or so will lose their homes in a year, and it's true that 97% of those people will have a home where their average principal and interest payment is a little under $600 a month, and that takes care of having a 2 and perhaps 3 bedroom house, well equipped. I invite you to go through it. And Clayton has behaved, in my book, extraordinarily well. The article talked about 30-year mortgages. Over 4.5 years ago, I said we're not going to have 30-year mortgages. So we don't have them except for the FHA guaranteed ones, which of course have a very low rate. So I have no, I'm proud of the Clayton management. I'm proud of the fact that they put this year maybe 30,000 people in homes at a very low cost, a very good home, and a very high percentage of those people are going to have those loans paid off probably in 20 years and have a home that has cost them, has been a real bargain, basically. I'll get to the other question, 3G question, just a second. I'll give Charlie a chance to say what he'd like to.
Well, I don't know a lot about the mortgage practices of Clayton, but I certainly know that we've sold an enormous number of houses, and we have a big share of the total market in manufactured.
About 50%.
Yeah, 50%. And it's a very constructive thing. Personally, I've always wondered why manufactured houses don't have a bigger share of the market. It's such an efficient way of creating quite usable houses. Part of the reason is that the tract builders under capitalism got so efficient. And isn't Clayton now doing some tract building itself?
Yeah.
I think so, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Clayton is a very productive part of the economy, but we can't make lending to poor people who buy houses 100% successful for everybody. We wouldn't be running the business right if the foreclosure rate was 0. Too many people would deserve credit that wouldn't get it.
Yeah, the big causes of default are the loss of a job, death, and divorce, and you know that happens with high-priced houses as well, but it happens more often with people that are living closer to the edge. But I don't think that's a reason to deny them a house, and particularly when so many, it turns out so well for so many. The 2008 recession and 9 was very interesting because all kinds of securitized deals involving houses costing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, the default rate on those was many, many, many times what happened in our own case. And similarly with delinquency rates, our delinquency rates are running about 3% currently. And the people want to live in those houses, and I think they deserve the right to. Incidentally, a few years ago, we had a couple of houses here. We called them the Warren and the Charlie. The Charlie sold first, and it sold to one of the cameramen who was in the credits on the movie you just saw. And you can check with Matt, and Matt Mason. He is very, very happy with that house he bought 4 or 5 years ago. The second question was about 3G, and I don't think you can ever find a statement that Charlie and I have ever made in terms of Berkshire's companies or anybody else's where we said that there should be more people working than are needed in a company. And the 3G people have been successful in building marvelous businesses, and it is true that they have entered into some purchases where there were considerably more people running the business than needed. And the interesting thing is that after they reduced the headcount to the number needed, the companies have done extremely well. I mean, you've seen Burger King outgrow its main competitor by a significant margin. You've seen Tim Horton have some very good figures in the first quarter, and I don't know of any company that has a policy that says we're going to have a lot more people than we need. But a good many companies end up in that position, and if 3G buys into one, they quite promptly and treat people well in terms of the severance, but they get it down to what they need. And I hope our Berkshire companies are not being run with more people than they need either. They usually aren't when we buy them, and we look for those kind of companies that are well managed. 3G will, if they find out that 100 people are doing what 50 people can do, they'll get it to where 50 people are doing it. And I think that actually makes sense throughout American business. Charlie?
Well, the alternate to the system of having your company right-sized, the right number of people, is what eventually happened in Russia. And there everybody had a job. And the way it all worked out was some workers said, well, they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work. And the whole damn economy didn't work. Of course we want the right number of people in the jobs.
It's interesting, in the railroad business, after World War II, in 1947 or thereabouts, I think there were about 1.6 million people in the railroad business, and it was a lousy business. And capital was short for any kind of improvements. And now there are less than 200,000. So they've gone from 1.6 million to less than 200,000, carrying more distance and doing it in far safer conditions. Safety has improved dramatically in the railroad industry. And if somebody thinks it would be better to be running the railroads with 1.6 million, people doing it, you would have a terrible railroad system. You wouldn't have anything like you have today. Efficiency is required over time in capitalism, and I really tip my hat to what the 3G people have done.